listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about marketing as a TPT seller, and this is the question I want to answer. Should you stop marketing your TPT store? And it's a two-part episode. In the first part, I want to talk about one platform. Should you quit a platform that you're currently doing? Maybe you have Pinterest, a Facebook, an Instagram, and a blog, and it's a bit much. But you're like, one of them is not really working for you. Like, can I quit my blogging or whatever? Like, should you quit one platform? The other part of this question is, should you stop marketing altogether? Which is another whole discussion. So it's a big two-part thing. But let's start with this first bit. Should you quit a single platform, a marketing platform? Is that the right thing to do? If you just got this feeling like, you're not enjoying it, or it's not working, or it's not making money, at what point do you quit? Should you quit? Let's dive into it. Here is a bit of criteria I think it's really good to sort of look at. First, have you given it more than a year and has it produced very little results? So I'm going to repeat that one again. Have you given it more than a year and has it shown little results? Now, those two things do need to go together, because it's not just about how long you do it for, it's about the results you get. So, you could work on a platform for 3 months and earn no money, but that's not a big deal. 3 years and earning no money, that's a big deal. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like you've got to have both. You've got to assess the length of time you've given and the results you're getting in order to really truly assess whether or not you should quit. And the reason I say, have you given it more than a year, is because it's very tempting, like I said a minute ago with the 3-month thing, to do something for a very short amount of time and to say, oh, this isn't working, and quit. Well, nothing really works overnight. You're not going to get overnight success on anything. So I don't think it's wise to quit something that you haven't really given a fair shot. So an example would be, you start an Instagram account in January, the beginning of the year, you're really gung-ho. By June, you're realizing that, you've not got many followers, it's not really working for you. And so you're just like, okay, forget this, I quit. And that's fair enough. If you want to do that as your business, you totally can. But I don't know many people who amass 50,000 followers in only 6 months. It's not something that happens overnight. And another example could be, you start a Pinterest account, you start pinning because you hear that's really great. You make yourself 10, 20 pins, you do it for 3 to 4 months and you're like, oh my goodness, I've not made any money from this, I quit Pinterest. Well, Pinterest is not going to take off for you in that really short amount of time. It can take sometimes about 6 months or so at least. And then finally, another example might be something like, start an email list and you do it for 7 to 8 months. You really put a lot of effort into writing those emails, but you're like, oh wow, I haven't really made any money from these emails in 7 to 8 months. Should I quit? But again, you've given it quite a short amount of time. That's not really giving it a fair shot. A lot of these things in terms of building relationships, building authority, having an algorithm trust you, all this stuff, it just doesn't happen in a really short amount of time. So you can't go throwing in the towel when you've given something, in my opinion, only months. But years is a very, very different story. Once you get to that first year anniversary of something, or you've been doing something for many years, if you are not seeing success, then by all means, you can 100% quit. And I truly believe that, because I think that that's plenty of time. I think that you can make really great progress in a year on anything if you're putting time into it. I'll caveat to add, of course, you've got to take anything I say with a grain of salt. One person's year is very different to another person's year. For example, seller A could spend a year growing their blog and they write 20 blog posts. Seller B could say that they've done a year of blogging and they've only written 2 blog posts. Well, that's obviously very different. You have got to give it an actual fair shot in that year, obviously, which means showing up and actually doing the work. But provided that you have done a year, and now this is the next bit, the little results thing. Have you genuinely seen little to no results? I don't say no results, because sometimes you will make a sale here or there, or a couple of dollars, whatever. Maybe you make a small amount of money. But if you are doing something for a really long amount of time, over a year, and you're finding that when you look at your traffic on TPT, it's brought you literally no money, or $10, $20, $50, something you just don't deem as enough for the time you put in, then fair enough. That's not got a good return on investment for you. If you've spent hours of your time doing something and it's paying like 5 cents an hour, then of course that's worth quitting. I totally agree with that. So it's just something to ask yourself. Have you given it a good year? Have you found that it's not brought you results? In that case, be sure to quit. But you have to have given it a fair shot in terms of the time and actually showing up and doing the work. You can't say that you gave Facebook a whole year, but really you only posted like a handful of times and you didn't really bother with it. Well, that's not really fair on Facebook, is it? So you have got to give it a fair shot. The other thing to ask yourself when you're thinking about, should I really quit a platform? And it is a big decision, especially if you have put in time to something, that sunk cost fallacy where you're like, well, I've put all this time in, I've got to keep going. When you put some time into something and you set yourself a goal, you're like, I want to master an email list this year. Like, it's a big thing. It's kind of scary to quit. We sometimes don't like to. We don't want to be a quitter, but sometimes you have to. It's the right thing for your business. But here's the other thing to ask. Do you hate it? Like with a passion? I absolutely hate this. Does it make you miserable? Are you just like putting it off and you just like, you never get around to it? It's always the bottom of your to-do list. You just, I don't want to do it. Does it make you like literally miserable? Like you're like, I just don't enjoy working on my business this hour that I have to do this thing. Because if you absolutely hate something, it is not worth it, in my opinion. And so, you can give something a certain amount of time. Maybe you've been releasing YouTube videos and that's like your long form content, but you just get into that point where the thought of having to record another video is just making your stomach churn. You're just like, I just can't do this anymore. If you just don't enjoy something, don't do it. Because the whole point of this business, I think, is to enjoy it. A lot of the people that do TPT, especially when you start out, it is kind of like a little side hustle. It's like a fun hobby. It's your passion project. It's like a creative outlet. And it can very quickly deteriorate into this thing that you hate and loathe. It becomes this monster, this greedy monster that sucks all your time. And it's very demanding, TPT. It can sort of, this is pressure to do all these different things. We start off with just wanting to create these amazing products and we use them in our classrooms most of the time. And then you blink and then the next second you realize that 5 years has gone by and suddenly you're like sitting there managing 5 marketing platforms and you're absolutely miserable and you're like, I thought I started this as like a fun, side project of creating, and how has this deteriorated into this really stressful thing? So, you just got to sometimes say to yourself, life's too short to be miserable. So if you hate something, if you've been forcing yourself to be on TikTok and you're just not an extrovert and you hate recording videos and it just makes you miserable, then I fully give you permission to quit. It is what's best for mental health. Now, the other thing to ask yourself as well is, can you afford to hire out? It's a good question to ask if you are a fairly established seller and deep down you can probably afford it. You don't have to quit something. You can certainly hand it off to someone else. And you can hand it off in its entirety by say hiring a social media manager that just takes over your social media platforms and be like, here you go, run with it. Goodbye. I don't want to look at Instagram ever again. You can do that. You can also though hire out part of something. Maybe you hire someone who is going to just proofread your blog posts and create the images and do all that kind of extra stuff, but you'll actually write the posts because you enjoy that. Maybe you'll have someone edit your YouTube videos or podcast. Maybe you'll hire someone to schedule your posts that you've created. Maybe you'll hire someone just to do editing and making reels for you. And there's so many different parts of marketing you could hire. You could create pins and hire someone to schedule them out. There's the options are endless in terms of outsourcing parts of marketing. You don't have to hand over the entire platform if you don't feel comfortable. We don't want to. But hiring is a way to stick with a platform, but not have to do it yourself if, like I said earlier, you hate it or you're feeling like you've given it time and it's not getting a lot of results and you're like, well, I still want to do this thing. I just don't want to be physically having myself doing it. I'd just rather have someone else do it. But you have got to look at those options there. Like I said, if you've given it a decent amount of time but you're not making money, you have got to consider, is it worth hiring? I think, you can hire anything, a profitable thing or a non-profitable thing. It doesn't matter. Hiring is always amazing, but sometimes it can be wise to put money into something that's going to make you money. So if you know that your blog brings you money, but you just not got the time to write blog posts, well, then you hire someone to write blog posts for you and, that's going to sustain your business. But if you've never really made any money from blogging and you're just not really enjoying it, I don't know if hiring is necessarily the best thing because someone else could take over, but is it ever going to make money or are you just going to be putting money into the sinking pit of something that you don't know is profitable or not? There's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, be mindful of what you hire, obviously, to make sure it's somewhat profitable. I think this is just a personal thing. You have to just look at your own business and what you value and what you want to keep and what you want to let go of. I definitely think you should, I give you permission basically that if you don't want to do something, just let it go. You don't have to be on Instagram just because everyone else is. You don't have to have an email list just because everyone else is. Like if you truly don't want to do something, honestly, there's no rule book here when it comes to TPT. There's no rules. You don't have to be doing anything. You get to choose what's right for your business. Everybody runs their business differently. Everyone's is so unique. You get to just pick and choose. It's like a little pick a mix of candy, and we call it sweets in the UK. You get to pick and choose which things you want. Oh, I like the look of that. I'm going to have that in my business. Ugh, that makes me feel gross. I don't like licorice, like not having that. But, you can do that with your business. You can say, like for me, I like Pinterest and blogging. It brings me a lot of money. Honestly, have always said I hate having a Facebook page. I think it's a waste of time. It doesn't bring me any money. Like that's my licorice. So anyway, you get to pick and choose. So have a little think about that. But I think that's definitely something to consider. Okay, I'm going to wrap up this episode because this question is being answered in 2 parts. And this was part 1 where I just want to talk about, should you quit one platform? And in the next episode, I'm going to talk about marketing as a whole. Is there a point in one's business where you should literally quit all marketing? That's a big one. I'm excited to talk about that. But in this one, I just wanted to touch on singular marketing platforms. And just a little summary, just as a reminder, I think the things to ask yourself are, have you genuinely given it more than a year, a decent amount of time? And it's actually brought you little to no money and results. And of course, the caveat being that you've actually given it a fair shot. You've got to have actually created some content for that platform, actually made some pins or posts or emails or blog posts or whatever. You've actually done some stuff for it. You can't have just sort of done like 2 blog posts in a year. That doesn't count. You're actually giving it a fair shot. And of course, ask yourself, if you hate it, if it literally makes you miserable, please get rid of it. Trust me on that. It's not worth it. Of course, consider hiring. It's always an option. If you're really thinking about quitting something, but you can afford to hire, you could always hire someone to just do part of it or something. And I do think the final thing I want to add as well is you do need to know what you're doing. And this is just like a harsh truth, but I think sometimes we like to blame other people and not ourselves. And I'm guilty of this too. We like to say, I could say this, for example, I could say that it's Facebook's fault, but it's not. It's not Facebook's fault. It's my fault that I don't have a thriving Facebook business page because I don't put in the time or effort. I don't have an interest in it. I don't really want to, put more into it. So that's on me. And sometimes you've got to acknowledge that it's not often the platform's fault. It's us. But, we just might genuinely not have the time, and it's okay. But I think you've got to know what you're doing if you want to see success on things. I actually think that success on a marketing platform is a 2-fold thing. One part is just natural talent, pure natural talent. And the other part is knowledge. So what I mean by that is, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Instagram. Some people have a natural talent for social media. They are just these glamorous, extrovert, bubbly, happy people who make these beautiful, gorgeous reels and videos and stories, and they take beautiful photos of their classrooms, and they were just born to be Instagram influencers. Like that is just some kind of natural talent they have that someone else just doesn't have. That no matter what you do, you just, you can't compete with that. Some people are just naturally talented. And then the other part I mentioned is the knowledge, and that's for something that is maybe something a bit more like Pinterest or blogging, where it's more about knowing what you're doing. And I hear so many people say, Pinterest doesn't work for me, or email list doesn't work for me, or blogging doesn't work for me. I honestly just want to shake them and say, well, is it the platform's fault or is it your fault? People love to say, oh, Pinterest is the worst or whatever, blogging's dead, or they love to criticize the platform and they don't want to look inwards and say, actually, I have no idea what I'm doing, or I'm not putting in the time and the effort. I think we've actually got to be honest with ourselves. And I could say, for example, that I don't really love Facebook ads. It's not a thing in my business that I would enjoy. But if I'm being honest with myself, it's because I have no idea what I'm doing. I've not, at this point in my business, really spent the time like taking a detailed course or hiring someone or whatever. So it overwhelms me because I don't really understand it. And then, I could easily be like, oh, Facebook ads are the worst. But no, they're amazing and they work for a lot of people. They don't work for me right now. I'm not doing them because I don't know what I'm doing. I need to sit down and I need to go and buy a course and learn Facebook ads or hire someone to be my strategist. That's on me. I take ownership of that. And I think you have to do that in your business. You have to say, oh, is Pinterest not working for you? Is it Pinterest's fault, or is it because you have no idea what you're doing on Pinterest? You just don't know what best practices are anymore. You don't know how to make a good quality pin. We have to be honest with ourselves. And I think that's just something, it's part of it being a business owner. You have to be able to reflect on that and not blame other people and other things and say, well, maybe it's me. And if it's me, can I fix that? Can I learn how to do this? Can I hire someone to do this? If not, then fine, I move on. Like, that's okay. I guess what I like to say to myself is there's not an excuse. It's the truth of it. There's so many podcasts, blog posts, YouTube videos, courses, memberships, free videos, like whatever, articles on Google. Like, there's so much information out there now about how to do everything. Like, whether it is Facebook ads or Pinterest or whatever, the information is there out in the world. Someone knows what to do that could teach you, or there's like something like a video or an article that will teach you. And have you taken the time to learn? Do you actually know what you're doing? I think that's a really good question to ask yourself. You say, I've failed at something in the last year. I've really failed at growing an email list. And, people aren't buying when I send my emails. And you have to ask yourself, is email marketing an awful platform that doesn't work? No. It's an incredibly successful way of marketing. Do you know how to write an email that converts to sales? Probably not. And that's the thing you've got to sort of look at as well. The reason I'm giving you this real harsh pep talk on this is because sometimes people need this push in order to not just quit, but to actually learn. So before you quit the platform and say, YouTube doesn't work for me or whatever, you learn how to be a successful YouTuber. You take the time to learn what needs to be done. Like I said before, there is a little bit of natural talent with the whole Instagram or TikTok kind of thing as an example that comes to mind. There are some people that just have that knack for it, and that might not be you, and you can acknowledge that and you can move on. It's okay. That's a part of it. That is just genuinely a part of it. But the other part is really that you can truly learn how to do anything, because the knowledge is out there. But have you taken the time to learn it, or have you invested the money to learn it? That's a big one. Many of us have a big money mindset block around, is we know, like on a deep level, that something is successful for other people and is a good thing that we should be doing, but we don't really want to invest in it. Like the Facebook ads thing is right. I know that works and a lot of people are doing it and making money from it. And I just need to make the effort and kick myself into gear to get around to finding the time to doing it, like to learning to how to do it, to taking a course, whatever. And I need to invest in a course or a person. That's money. And we have that block sometimes where we're like, I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to do the time in. I just want to quit and blame someone else or whatever. But anyway, something to think about is, have you really given it a fair shot and do you actually know what you're doing? Really important question to ask yourself. Now, I know that has been a bit harsh. It's like a real harsh pep talk for you, but I can't be all sunshine and rainbows on this podcast all the time. Sometimes I have to be here as your coach, as your mentor, like as your, friend, and to kind of shake you and say, is it you? Is it them or is it you? Sometimes it's you and that's okay. Sometimes it's me. But a lot of the time it's me. When I look at my business and I say, gosh, that thing's not working. This thing is not working for me. It's not bringing me money, or this thing's a failure. And I have to admit that, there's work that could be done for me. There's things that I could be doing better. And this is not for you to sit here and feel bad about yourself. I don't want you to sit there and feel like, oh, I'm a terrible business owner. I'm terrible at this. You're not terrible. Trust me. There's a whole natural talent and knowledge thing there. And, there's a lot of things that are out of your control, but learning how to do something that's in your control. Sometimes we've got to take ownership. I think that's a little bit of the message I want to share in this episode, is you have to take ownership of things. But despite my big long rant about, learning how to do something instead of just quitting, I truly want this episode to also be the permission, like I said, to quit something if it is not bringing you joy. That is fine. Okay, I'm going to wrap this episode up. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you aren't already, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Terrific Selling Tactics. And the reason I say that is just that I do post stories on there fairly often, and I often kind of share almost mini podcast episodes like this where I'll, share tips or kind of rant about things, kind of give harsh truths or whatever. So, if you enjoy this kind of content and you sometimes feel like you need this kind of stuff, yeah, you can get your little daily dose of that on Instagram. Anyway, have a terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.